Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back after recuperating from bronchitis and walking pneumonia and food poisoning again. It's been loads of fun. Anyway, let's get right into the card. I was asked to guest design for MFT this past week, and this is the card I made, and I filmed it while I was making it, so I have some footage to share with y'all. And I'm starting off with, I have my Tonic Easy Clean craft mat here, and I'm just mushing some distress inks. I'm using both distress ink and distress oxide ink. Not 100% necessary. I was just curious to see what would happen. I've done tons of videos of ink smushing over the years. The funnest thing about this is you never know exactly how it's going to turn out, and it's just fun. So I went with more sort of pastel colors. I'm using spun sugar, squeezed lemonade, tumbled glass. I smushed the distress ink little minis first, and then I added that little bit of distress oxide inks, just cuz, and then sprayed it with my distress sprayer, which causes everything to kind of bead up, and then I'm pressing a piece of distress watercolor paper into it. Now, first layer, nothing too exciting. The whole fun about this is to build those layers. So that's what I do. And I just dry the layers in between with a heat tool just to speed up the process. Otherwise it would take forever. But dried it between, and then just kind of keep pressing it into all these little like puddles of color to add all that fun, you know, splatter and texture and whatnot. So after I'd done this, I liked the spun sugar, but I really wanted to intensify that pink a bit. So I pulled out Worn Lipstick Distress Ink and Distress Oxide Ink. And I'm kind of going to repeat the process, just not using quite as much ink because I don't want to completely cover that background. I'm happy with it. I just wanted to intensify the pink area. So I smushed the colors again. And every time I've placed them in rainbow, sort of rainbow order, you know, pink, then yellow, then blue, because where the pink and yellow mix, I'll get a little bit of an orange, where the yellow and blue mix, I get a little bit of a green. And as long as you kind of keep them mostly separated, it helps kind of avoid getting things muddy and, you know, ugly. So once I was happy with it, I completely dried it, and then I ran it through my die cutting machine with the My Favorite Things Lots of Hearts cover up Die-Namics. I especially liked this one because this, even though it's a cover-up Die-Namics, there's quite a bit of space left over. Like, you know, these hearts kind of take up the bulk of the background. So I'm not losing much of the design and the, you know, splattery, textury bits. So I die cut that once with that background. And then I had another die cut of just white cardstock. And I decided to adhere these together just to give it that little extra bit of dimension on my card. So I just applied a liquid adhesive to the back of the splattered panel and then glued those layers together. And then I'm going to apply more adhesive on the back of this and then adhere it directly to my card base, which is heavyweight white cardstock cut at 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. So it'll be a top folding A2 sized card. So I just put a light little bit of glue on the back of this, and then I'm going to adhere this to my card front. And then I'd also die cut my sentiment, which is the Smitten, or Lots of Love Die-Namics. So I die cut that from black cardstock, and then same thing. I'm going to stack these together. This time I have 3 die cuts, and I'm going to adhere them together with that liquid adhesive. Again, it just gives way more dimension, you know, to die cut pieces, especially sentiments. It's almost impossible now for me to not stack them because it just looks so much better in my opinion. Anyway. Stack them together. I'm applying some more adhesive, and then I'm going to adhere this directly down to the background. And then I saved the center pieces from like the heart. I'm going to use 2 of them from the black cardstock, and then I also die cut a little scrap of some gold pearl, like reflective card from that exact same area too. So I just stacked in the 2 layers of black first, and then I'm inlaying the top layer with that gold. And the whole thing, that was actually inspired by the sentiment I'm going to use. I wouldn't even have really thought to do that. But then I was looking at the sentiment from this Smitten with You stamp set, and the sentiment says, "You have a heart of gold." And when I was looking at the sentiment, I was like, what if I made the, you know, the heart on the sentiment gold? You know, just tie it all together. So I pulled that sentiment out, of course, and then I pulled out a second sentiment from that set, and I'm just lining them up in my mini Misty onto this scrap of white cardstock. I use my anti-static powder tool going to brush off the excess, and then I'm going to ink up the 2 sentiments with some clear embossing ink. I'm going to close the lid of my Mini Misty, stamp those sentiments onto the white cardstock, and then I take a good look at it because it's clear ink on white, and I just can't see things like I used to, so making sure, you know, I got the whole sentiment stamped. I'm going to coat those in gold embossing powder, and then once those coated, I'm going to melt those with my heat tool. I let my heat tool heat up for just a few seconds. The Wagner heat tool that I use and that I always link to, it does not need very long to heat up. I've seen so many horror stories online of people like nearly burning their houses down with these things. Always use caution with the heat tool. Unplug it when it's not in use. Common sense. It gets very, very hot. It doesn't need to heat up for very long before you bring it to your cardstock. So, and then once it's brought to your cardstock, it doesn't need to sit there for very long. Just until the emboss powder's melted, then you're done. Quick, simple, common sense. Always be safe. There's my PSA for the day. Anyway, after I had melted those, I used my Tim Holtz guillotine little trimmer here just to trim these into little sentiment strips. And as always, getting my head in the way because I like to eyeball it, but also making sure things are straight. So got those trimmed down. And then I wanted to add more than just the sentiment to the inside of the card. So I pulled out just the solid heart from the little cute conversation stamp set because I had it sitting here. All the other hearts in the set have little, you know, XOXO and words and stuff on it, which is fine. But I just wanted the solid heart. So I put it on an acrylic block. I'm inking it up with the Oxide inks. And then I'm just very lightly misting it with water because I've got more than one color each time I stamp it. And it just kind of helps them to blend and stamp a little smoother. But I was kind of doing this in reminiscent of what's on the front of the card, the background I'd created. So it's just kind of fun way to add the colors. So very lightly mist it with water. I'm using my little, just my flour sack cloth that I've shown in a ton of videos. Like this thing is getting completely stained, which is totally fine. This thing is huge too. I've shown, I like to protect my work surface with this when I'm spraying things, and especially even just spraying water to make sure I'm not getting my cardstock all wet, that sort of thing. So I just kept inking up the stamp with those Oxide inks, and then spraying it lightly with the water, stamping it, good to go. So I added those little hearts to the inside, and then I'm just going to adhere the second sentiment that I had done to the inside of the card. And this one says, if I had 100 hearts, they'd all belong to you. This is another one of my, part of my Valentine series, but it's not a specific Happy Valentine's Day card. Because like I've mentioned in so many of my videos, I don't really have a need for specifically Valentine's cards per se, but I love making them this time of year, but I keep them a little more open-ended. Like this would be to me, this is a thank you card, you know, just a nicer way to, or a different way to say thank you. So I popped on this front sentiment with just a little Derice foam strip, just pop that under the die cut sentiment. And then as a final bit of bling, I pulled out some Studio Caudia. These are Crystal Rainbow Fusion sequins. These are some of my absolute favorites. Just love the colors, and the colors went really well with the background, and they just, you know, add that bit of bling. So I adhered those into place, and that finished off the card. So I will have links below the video to my blog post. I'll have a supply list. I'll link to everything I used if you want to check that out. It'll be in the description box directly below the video, as well as on my blog, which is also linked directly below my video. Thank you all so much for watching, and stay tuned. I plan on having a whole bunch of videos coming while I'm catching up with everything. So I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!